June 6, 1944. While thousands of Allied soldiers braced themselves for the blood-soaked sands of Normandy, far from the beaches, in a quiet room filled with radios and static, one man's voice changed the course of history. His name was Juan Pujol García, and his greatest weapon wasn't a gun, but a lie so perfect that even Adolf Hitler believed it. But to understand how a single man could fool an empire, we must go back to where his story began, long before D-Day, before codenames and secret missions, to a time when Europe was breaking apart. Juan Pujol was born in Barcelona, Spain, in 1912. He wasn't a soldier by nature, nor a trained spy. He was the son of a modest businessman, a quiet and curious man who despised extremism in all forms. When Spain fell into civil war in the 1930s, he witnessed unspeakable brutality from both sides, fascists and communists alike. He came out of that war with a simple, stubborn belief that tyranny must be deceived, not fought directly. When World War II erupted, Juan Pujol wasn't looking for glory, he was looking for meaning. The Nazis terrified him. Their ideology, their methods, everything about them reminded him of the darkness he had already seen in Spain. He decided somehow he would fight them, not with bullets, but with intelligence. But there was one problem. No one wanted him. He offered his services to the British intelligence, MI6, but they turned him away. He had no experience, no references, and no reason to be trusted. To them, he was just another foreigner with big dreams and no credibility. So Juan Pujol made a decision that would define his life. If Britain wouldn't hire him as a spy, he would become one anyway. He approached the Nazis instead. He claimed he was a loyal Spaniard who admired Hitler and wanted to serve the Reich. With forged documents and an elaborate story, he convinced German intelligence, the Abwehr, that he was in London, even though he was actually hiding in Lisbon, Portugal. He had no contacts, no network, and no resources, but he had imagination, and that was enough. Every week, Pujol began sending reports to the Nazis, reports entirely made up. He invented agents across England, a dock worker, a journalist, a soldier, even a typist inside the Ministry of Information. Each had their own personality, background, and purpose. Through these fictional people, Pujol fed the Germans lies so detailed that they became truth. Incredibly, the Nazis believed every word. They paid him, they praised him. They even gave him the codename Arabelle. Pujol knew that eventually the British would notice. He needed to get their attention before the Germans discovered his lies. So he continued sending fake reports, this time making them partially accurate using news articles and radio updates to appear authentic. His network of imaginary agents grew, 10, 15, then 20 people, each sending false information from across the United Kingdom. By 1942, his work caught the eye of MI5, Britain's counterintelligence agency. At first, they couldn't believe it. A Spaniard pretending to be a Nazi spy, already feeding disinformation to the Germans on his own. But when they verified his success, they brought him to London immediately. There, he was given a new codename, Garbo. Inspired by the actress Greta Garbo, because like her, he was a master performer. Under MI5's control, Garbo's lies became deadly serious. He now had access to real intelligence tools, cryptographers, and communications officers. Together, they built a fictional empire, 27 agents who never existed, but whose reports shaped Nazi strategy. Each agent had a background file, fake expenses, and even fake deaths. MI5 even buried one of them in an imaginary bombing raid, and the Germans sent condolences. This wasn't just deception, it was art. Garbo's messages became one of the most trusted intelligence sources inside Hitler's war machine. German officers referenced his reports in strategy meetings. His agents were considered national heroes. And through it all, Juan Pujol, this soft-spoken, ordinary Spaniard, smiled behind the curtain. He was playing chess with an empire and winning. But as 1944 approached, the stakes rose higher than ever. The Allies were preparing the most ambitious military operation in human history, Operation Overlord, the invasion of Nazi-occupied France. If Garbo failed now, if his lies slipped even once, D-Day could collapse before it began. And so, the greatest deception of the Second World War began. By early 1944, the Allies were preparing the largest amphibious invasion in human history. Operation Overlord, the assault on Nazi-occupied France. Months of planning, training, and coordination had gone into the operation. Soldiers were drilled in secret, paratroopers rehearsed night drops, tanks and artillery were transported across the English Channel, and every officer understood that even the smallest mistake could lead to catastrophe. Yet despite all the meticulous preparation, the success of the invasion hinged on one man, Juan Pujol García, known to the Allies as Garbo. Garbo's mission was deceptively simple: deceive Hitler into believing the Allied invasion would occur at Pas-de-Calais instead of Normandy. The complexity, however, was staggering. Every detail had to be perfectly crafted to maintain the illusion. Garbo began by sending reports filled with detailed, fabricated intelligence to the Germans. He invented a network of agents across the United Kingdom, each with their own identity, occupation, and mission. Some claimed to have seen troop movements in southern England, while others reported on fictional supply depots and supposed military exercises. Every report was painstakingly designed to sound authentic. The Germans believed him. The Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service, trusted Garbo's reports implicitly. They praised his work, rewarded him, and even elevated his credibility within their organization. Meanwhile, Garbo was secretly in contact with MI5, the British counterintelligence agency. Initially skeptical, British intelligence soon recognized the incredible potential of his deception. Under MI5 supervision, Garbo's operation expanded. He created 27 fictional agents, each generating their own reports and updates. MI5 even manufactured documents, bank accounts, and other credentials to lend credibility to the false network. Every detail, from fake expenses to staged deaths of agents, was designed to convince the Germans that a vast spy network existed across Britain. It was a feat of imagination, logistics, and strategic thinking. As the date of the invasion approached, Garbo escalated the deception. He reported that Allied forces were massing near Pas-de-Calais, detailing fake troop movements, purported plans, and invented supply challenges. Every German officer who read his reports accepted them without question. Hitler, famously suspicious and paranoid, relied heavily on Garbo's intelligence when making strategic decisions. The result was a dramatic misallocation of German resources. Panzer divisions, reserves, and fortifications were concentrated at the wrong location, leaving Normandy relatively lightly defended. Garbo's strategy combined truth and fiction with surgical precision. Small kernels of real information, such as minor troop movements or public news items, were interwoven with fabricated reports. This subtle blending of fact and fiction created credibility and minimized suspicion. The Germans never detected the ruse. Each letter reinforced the illusion of a competent, widespread intelligence network, and Hitler's trust in Garbo grew stronger by the week. In Lisbon and London, Garbo's life became a careful performance. He met regularly with MI5 officers, coordinating his communications and refining his messages. He had to maintain his cover as a loyal Nazi agent, while simultaneously assisting the Allies. Any mistake could expose him to immediate execution. Despite the constant danger, he remained methodical, meticulous, and composed, understanding that millions of lives would be influenced by his work. As spring 1944 turned into summer, the stakes rose even higher. Allied planners needed Hitler to remain convinced of a fake invasion location to ensure D-Day's success. Garbo continued sending increasingly urgent messages, warning of imaginary troop buildups, feigned attacks, and fictitious reinforcements. Every communication was timed to influence German perceptions and delay their response. Hitler and his generals acted precisely as Garbo intended, preparing for an invasion that would never come while Normandy waited for the real assault. When June 6th arrived, Garbo sent his final pre-invasion messages. He warned the Germans that the main assault would occur at Pas-de-Calais and urged maximum preparedness. The Germans, convinced by his intelligence, held back critical units from Normandy. Allied troops stormed the beaches with significantly reduced opposition. Garbo's deception had succeeded in its ultimate goal, misdirecting the enemy and ensuring the success of one of history's most decisive operations. Through careful planning, creativity, and audacious courage, Garbo manipulated the world's most powerful dictator from thousands of miles away. The lives saved, the strategic advantage gained, and the success of D-Day were in large part a result of a single man's brilliance. Juan Pujol García, a quiet Spaniard with no formal military experience, had become one of the most consequential figures of World War II. His story was a testament to ingenuity, courage, and the extraordinary impact one person could have on history. In the weeks following D-Day, the extraordinary consequences of Juan Pujol García's deception became undeniable. Hitler had placed his complete trust in Garbo, reading every report and taking every recommendation as gospel. The Allied invasion of Normandy, while dangerous and bloody, faced far less resistance than it would have if the Germans had deployed their full strength. Panzer divisions remained in Pas-de-Calais, artillery and reinforcements were misallocated, and German commanders hesitated to move forces without explicit confirmation from Garbo's network. Garbo's success rested on his meticulous construction of an entirely fictional spy network. Each of his 27 imaginary agents had identities, professions, and backstories. Some were claimed to be journalists, others factory workers, even dockhands and soldiers. Every week, he submitted reports, supposedly compiled by these agents, detailing troop movements, naval preparations, and supply issues across Britain. Each report contained small grains of truth to lend credibility, but the majority was fabricated, designed to manipulate German strategic decisions. The brilliance of Garbo's strategy lay in his attention to detail and psychological insight. He understood the limitations of the German command structure and Hitler's own tendencies toward paranoia and distrust. By providing information that appeared urgent and consistent, he guided the enemy into making decisions favorable to the Allies. Hitler, obsessed with Pas-de-Calais, refused to divert reinforcements to Normandy, despite reports of Allied landings. German generals, afraid of contradicting the Führer, complied, further amplifying Garbo's influence. At the same time, Garbo coordinated closely with MI5. The British intelligence officers refined his messages, ensuring that each false report blended seamlessly with real information available to the Germans. They staged fake troop movements, constructed radio traffic from imaginary divisions, and timed communications to maximize believability. Through these efforts, the Germans came to see Garbo's intelligence as not only reliable, but indispensable. As the Normandy invasion unfolded, Garbo escalated his deception. He reported continued Allied activity in southern England, suggested reinforcements were arriving at Pas-de-Calais, and described ongoing preparations for a main assault, that would never happen. Hitler reinforced the wrong locations, diverted forces from Normandy, and delayed counterattacks. Garbo's genius was in his timing and his ability to predict the Germans' responses. Each report anticipated the enemy's moves and manipulated their decisions in real time. By the time German commanders realized the true scale and location of the Normandy landings, it was too late to respond effectively. The Allies had gained a critical foothold in Europe, altering the course of the war. Beyond the operational impact, Garbo's story exemplified the power of intelligence, creativity, and audacity. A single individual, using lies and ingenuity rather than weapons, had influenced the decisions of the most powerful military in the world. He had changed history not through force but through strategy, psychology, and deception. The success of D-Day was owed as much to Garbo's network of imaginary agents as to the courage of the soldiers who stormed the beaches. In the aftermath, Garbo continued his work, maintaining the illusion for months after the initial landings. German intelligence remained convinced of his reliability, and Hitler's trust in him never wavered. Through careful planning, attention to detail, and unparalleled audacity, Juan Pujol García had executed one of the most consequential acts of espionage in human history. With the successful landings at Normandy, the Allied forces began their push into occupied France, and the scale of Juan Pujol García's accomplishment became clearer. Hitler had been completely misled by Garbo's elaborate network of fictional agents, and the German High Command struggled to respond effectively. Entire divisions remained in Pas-de-Calais, awaiting an invasion that would never come, while the Allies consolidated their positions and advanced inland. The lives saved by Garbo's deception were incalculable, and his influence on the course of the war was profound. Despite the triumph, Garbo could not rest. He remained active, continuing to send messages to the Germans to reinforce the illusion that Pas-de-Calais was still the primary target. His reports described phantom troop buildups, feigned reinforcements, and ongoing Allied preparations. By maintaining the credibility of his network, he ensured that German forces remained misallocated for weeks after the initial invasion, buying the Allies crucial time to strengthen their foothold and prepare for subsequent operations. At the same time, Garbo's personal life was a delicate balancing act. He had to sustain the impression of loyalty to the Germans while coordinating closely with MI5. Any misstep could have led to discovery and certain death. He adopted false identities, maintained secret meeting schedules, and communicated with both sides in a manner that concealed his true allegiance. Every word, every action was calculated to preserve the deception and protect the lives depending on it. The Germans, utterly convinced by Garbo's intelligence, continued to adjust their strategy based on his false reports. Hitler himself relied on Garbo's messages to make critical decisions, often delaying deployments and refusing to commit elite divisions to Normandy. This blind trust allowed the Allies to execute further operations with minimal resistance. Garbo's success demonstrated the extraordinary impact of psychological warfare and intelligence manipulation, proving that the mind could be a more powerful weapon than tanks or artillery. As the months passed, Garbo's contributions remained largely invisible to the world. While the soldiers on the beaches fought and died, and generals executed complex maneuvers, one man had quietly influenced the course of history from behind the scenes. His network of imaginary agents, sustained by ingenuity and meticulous planning, continued to shape the enemy's perceptions and actions. He had created an entire reality for Hitler and the German High Command, one that existed only on paper and in carefully crafted letters. When the war eventually ended, Garbo faced a different kind of challenge. He could not return to a normal life without risking recognition by the Germans, who still believed in his loyalty. He faked his own death and relocated to Venezuela, living quietly for decades. His extraordinary service remained a secret for many years, known only to a handful of Allied intelligence officers who understood the full extent of his achievements. It was not until long after the war that the world learned the truth, that a single man, armed only with imagination and audacity, had played a decisive role in one of history's greatest military operations. Juan Pujol Garcia's story is more than a tale of espionage. It is a testament to the power of strategy, intelligence, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Through his careful deception, he saved countless lives, protected the success of D-Day, and changed the trajectory of World War II. His legacy is a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary heroes are not found on the battlefield, but in the shadows, where intellect and ingenuity shape history in ways that the world may never fully see. With the Allied victory in Europe, the world began to reckon with the enormous scale of World War II's human and military cost. Millions had died, entire cities lay in ruins, and yet behind the scenes, some of history's most critical actions went almost entirely unnoticed. Among these unsung heroes was Juan Pujol García, the man who had deceived Hitler, manipulated the enemy's entire command structure, and saved countless lives through nothing more than intelligence and audacity. Even after D-Day and the liberation of France, Garbo continued to maintain his cover. The Germans remained convinced of his loyalty, receiving his messages with unwavering trust. Hitler's obsession with Pas-de-Calais persisted, and German forces delayed redeploying critical divisions, believing that the Allies' main assault had yet to come. Garbo's work brought not just hours, but weeks of tactical advantage, giving the Allies time to advance further into Europe and solidify their operations. When the war finally ended in May 1945, Garbo faced a dilemma. Returning to a normal life in Europe was dangerous. The Germans who survived the war still believed he was one of their most trusted spies, and exposure could have led to reprisals. To protect himself and preserve the secrecy of his operations, Garbo faked his own death and relocated to Venezuela. He lived quietly, far from the accolades and recognition he had earned, a man whose contributions had shaped the outcome of one of history's defining battles. Decades later, the truth of his work began to emerge. Allied intelligence officers documented his role, historians pieced together his incredible exploits, and the world finally learned of the spy who had fooled Hitler. His achievements were extraordinary. A single individual, operating without weapons or armies, had manipulated the enemy's perception of reality, directly influencing the success of D-Day. Garbo's network of fictional agents, meticulously constructed and carefully maintained, had altered the course of the war without ever firing a shot. Garbo's story is remarkable not only for its strategic brilliance, but for its human dimension. He was an ordinary man, motivated by a desire to oppose tyranny and save lives, yet capable of extraordinary feats of creativity, courage, and precision. The deception required patience, intelligence, and audacity, qualities that allowed him to operate undetected in one of history's most dangerous arenas. The scale of his achievement illustrates how one person's ingenuity can ripple through history, impacting millions and shaping the outcome of world events. Today, Juan Pujol García is remembered as one of the greatest spies of all time. His work exemplifies the subtle power of deception, intelligence, and psychological insight in warfare. He was a man who changed history not through force or violence, but through intellect, perseverance, and an unparalleled understanding of human behavior. In a war defined by brutality, blood, and destruction, Garbo's quiet heroism serves as a reminder that sometimes the most significant battles are won in silence by those whose names the world only discovers long after their deeds have reshaped history. The spy who fooled Hitler demonstrated that courage comes in many forms. Some wield rifles and cannons, others hold the power to change minds. Juan Pujol Garcia's story is a testament to the extraordinary impact a single individual can have, a narrative that combines cunning, creativity, and moral courage into a legacy that will endure for generations. His life remains a symbol of intelligence, perseverance, and the subtle, yet profound, power of deception in the course of history.